Right, good morning everybody. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We are running a series of webinars. We've looked at Kenya being open a couple of weeks ago, as well as Zambia being open, but we also wanted to look at some other aspects of what's important to us and what is even more important in this day, having had this bizarre, incredibly tough time, certainly for the travel industry, and even more so for the conservation that the travel industry supports. The essential role that sustainable and responsible travel plays in protecting African wildlife has never been more important, actually. And at Honorway, we're really proud to be working with some very inspiring and truly incredible people, with conservation and communities at the core ethics, continuously striving to support their people, their local communities, their wildlife, their wilderness areas, all through this COVID pandemic, and of course, far beyond. Today, we are with Cottars. The Cottars family have always believed that tourism, when practiced correctly, has a really positive impact on conservation and human development. And as such, the two have been completely intertwined and ingrained from the very start, with steps taken to continuously drive this forward. The long run has been one such initiative. With an ethos, Cottars has followed through in every aspect of the company. Cottar Safari Camp joined the long run in 2012, and we're incredibly proud to be awarded Global Ecosphere Retreat status recognition in 2015. The long run is a membership organisation of nature-based tourism businesses committed to driving sustainability. Its members and supporters share a vision of business, nature, and people working harmoniously together for a sustainable future. Collectively, the long run conserves over 20 million acres of ecosystems and improves the lives of more than 750,000 people around the world. The organisation supports, connects, and inspires members to operate according to the 4 C's, which include conservation, community, culture, and commerce. Today, we are with Louise Cottar. She is the owner of Cottars and one of only 9 long-run GER recognised lodges around the world. And she's going to talk about their conservation efforts and the decision to join the long run. We are here with Delphine King, who's the director of the long run, and she's going to tell us a bit more about what the long run entails and what it's all about, what they're looking for in the lodges and camps that they work with, and how they work together. We've also got Holly Tuppen, who is a freelance journalist and communications manager at the long run, and she's going to discuss why talking confidently about sustainability is more important than ever, especially also in the future of travel. And finally, but certainly not least, we've got Cottars senior guide Douglas Nagy, who is based at Cottars and looks after the 4 C's Centre, and will explain what these 4 C's look like in practice, and how, of course, our guests can get involved during their stay with us on the ground and take away a lot of what they learned during their stay at Cottars back home again. So just quickly, we will be taking questions at the end, so please put your questions in the question box. I will look after those, and we will be following up with a little synopsis of what we talk about today, but also a little bit more. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up and hand you over to Louise, who is first going to talk about the Cottars side of things, then Delphine, then Holly, and then Douglas, and then question answers. So thank you very much for being here today. Louise, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for everyone joining us today in this presentation. I know that my colleagues will have far more interesting things to say than I do, so I'm just going to speak a little bit about why Cottars joined the long run and what it means for us, but actually in a way what it means for those in the travel supply side, because in the industry generally there's a lot of greenwashing, and there's a lot of options for camps and lodges in the field to sort of sign up and get eco credentials. We spent a lot of time looking at what options are out there, and yes, we do have some tick box credentials, but we were really looking for an organization that could help us articulate and get to a very ambitious vision. And really the only player out there that does that, and it does it not only for destinations, but is also increasingly looking further up the sort of supply chain, is the long run. And we really spent a long time searching who could help us. Cottar's was the first long run member to go through the entire full GER process, from member to GER status. We began and spent 2 years looking at our strategy and how we want to vision and change and make that change happen. In terms of full disclosure, I am a board member of the long run. So I need to say that up front. I am very supportive of the work that they do, because their work helps us in terms of achieving our strategy, but also in terms of giving us a positioning in the marketplace that does stand out and is different. So the long run helped us within their framework that uses conservation, community, culture, and commerce to find a concrete way forward for us to sort of internally build in sustainability into our business. It helped us develop our strategy and our vision and aim higher than we would have done had it just been us alone. And it also helped us go from talking the talk to walking the walk. But it's not a process that's one-off. It's a continuous journey of improvement. And on top of that, it allows us, when we get together for annual meetings, to have sort of phenomenal peer-to-peer learning. And what's really fascinating is that we're based in Africa, but we learned, for instance, from Vanas in Sweden, issues around legacy planning. We learned from the Cayman Ecological Refuge in Brazil, how it is to create expanded, complex wildlife corridors. We learned from Rupos in South Africa that with the right guide and the right knowledge, the plant kingdom can be as fascinating as the animal kingdom. And we learned from Lapa Rios, a long-term vision of reforestation and what impact that can have. You can send your clients to any property. Cottar's is quite unique in that we're in a conservancy. It's the only conservancy around the Mara that has never been subdivided, that the community have put into a long-term conservation plan. And if a property within the long run network has either become a member or reached the Global Ecosphere status, you know, you will know for sure that you're going to be helping secure land for biodiversity, that you're going to be supporting community by sending clients there, that it will have a positive impact, and that it will respect culture and communities, which is so often lost in the mix of tourism. So for us, the journey helped us develop a 5-year strategy with annual work plans. On the right hand part of this slideshow is a map, and we really looked at the importance of future wildlife corridors and trying to find ways with the community to secure them. And that's really one of the key essence that made us a global ecosphere. And so the 2 orange lines are key wildlife migratory corridors. We are in this small green section on the left. And what we're trying to do over time is expand the land for wildlife corridors whilst giving a return to the community. But it's also helped us look at things within our business that perhaps weren't so important in the past. For instance, what is our culture? Yes, our culture is Maasai. You can see with Doug and the Maasai in the background that we're in Maasai land, and the Maasai people are incredibly important. But in our mix of culture is also the history of safari. And so we've done a lot to maintain our historical legacy from the last 100 years and put it into a trust for future generations. It's also around financial sustainability. So we looked at how secure we were financially, thankfully, as part of this plan. And that is what is now helping us survive. That we looked at financial sustainability, which, you know, within industry, many have not done well. But it's helping us still convert what our offer is to the marketplace. So the Masai Mara, you know, is famous for the big five. But you'll see in this list, which Doug will explain further subsequently, a whole bunch of activities that aren't usual in a big five sort of traditional go to the Mara experience. And we're hoping that all of these give the same wow factor as seeing a first lion. And so Doug will speak to that more. I would say, as a travel supplier or as a journalist, the long run members are different. They are strategically taking steps for sustainability in ways that are not only meaningful, but actually impact globally. So Delphine will speak more, but we are contributing to biodiversity species, and I think we're at 23 million acres between all the properties in terms of land under conservation. And we do our bit, and when it adds up, I think we have probably the broadest set of travel players supporting the widest biodiversity in the world. And that is saying something, and it does differentiate it. Guests seem to want now more purposeful travel. And I think it's important that suppliers can weed out those that are illegitimate and those that can provide genuine experiences. And I do believe that's what the long run is about. So thank you, and I'll hand over to Delphine.
Thank you, Louise. That was a wonderful introduction to what the long run looks like at a destination level, and how impactful it can be locally. And then we can zoom out, as you know, on just taking your last word on how together then the impact can go global. So I'll share my screen too. Share screen. So just picking from what Louise said, I think that the long run was created 10 years ago, 2009. So 11 years ago. I think this year has passed in a flash, and it was born really from the need to think differently, both from a business perspective, but as well as a conservation perspective. So the objective of the long run was looking at how can we conserve landscape and the biosphere and, you know, functioning ecosystems in perpetuity, and with the understanding that business could have a role to play in this, a much bigger role, a much more positive role, and tourism was an obvious candidate. So the long run was created 10 years ago by Jochen Zeitz, and it was born from his love of Africa and looking at how could we preserve these landscapes that we all love, but also, you know, that support livelihoods and the well-being of people in perpetuity. And for this, it was really looking at how can we have a more holistic approach to what we do. So looking at models around the world, you know, we brought together, or Jochen brought together, people who had a similar idea to look at things in a more holistic, you know, just financial bottom line just didn't make sense anymore, and we know where we're at with financial bottom line, but conservation without thinking about financial sustainability was also hitting a wall. So bringing together 9 members from around the world who had leading, you know, innovative ideas, we created a blueprint for what, you know, our framework has become. The framework of the 4 Cs, and we took best practice and put our aim as, you know, what's best in what we can do in conservation community culture and commerce, with the idea that these 4 aspects have to be in balance for us to have biodiversity in perpetuity, prospering communities, as well as a 100-year, 150-year approach to our business. So what is it about? What's the long run about? I think Anna has talked about it and has introduced it quite in detail, but we're a global community of like-minded people, and we bring together these people to exchange, to learn from each other, to not have to reinvent the wheel, but also for pushing the boundaries. So there's a bit of peer competition, but there's also a lot of pushing from the team. Our question is always, okay, so what's the next step? Where can we make more impact? So it's about impact. We're trying to drive impact, and what we believe is that to scale up change, we need collaboration. And this is what we're about, bringing minds together, but they're passionate. They're passionate and innovative minds. It's about this framework. It was trying to find a concrete way to help people embed sustainability. Sustainability is a very complex concept. And often we have a lot of businesses, a lot of operators who are interested in doing better, being more responsible, being more sustainable, and don't necessarily see how to do it. It's overwhelming. So the 4Cs kind of provided a more concrete and tangible way for businesses for travel operators to embed in their operations at all levels. But it's basically shifting mindset, and I'll explain that a bit better. So what we do, we connect our members, we support them. I think Louise explained a bit how, and we promote what they're doing, but we promote mainly their impact with the idea of inspiring others to take up best practice and to join this innovative way of thinking. And so there's this kind of dual approach to what the team does. There's like nurturing a journey, an individual journey, as well as nurturing that collective journey and bringing the lessons and innovation to the world of other tourism stakeholders, but as well as the conservation sector, to show how private sector can be considered as a full stakeholder in conservation, as we see, together, basically, our members protect or help protect 23 million acres of nature, I think 416 endangered species, and help the lives of 750,000. It's just from one member doing its best at this landscape level and continuously trying to drive impact at the landscape level. What can we achieve when we're hundreds, 200s, 1,000? Obviously much bigger, but it also the importance of looking at one landscape and this connectivity within the landscape, but between landscapes, that we stimulate also at the global level. This is what our community looked like. We started in Kenya, so we have a lot of East African, Southern African members. We've grown a lot in Southern America, more slowly in Asia and Europe. But the idea is really to create more and more, as we grow, more and more regional collaboration and interaction, so that there is that cross-pollination, both remotely and face-to-face. But there's also opportunities for actual collaborative projects, and that members can do, economies of scales on which they can create together at a region. So we have a very strong Kenyan, you wonder why, but a very strong Kenyan regional group, but we also have a strong Latin America group and an Asia group forming. But the idea there is that these part that we get, for example, in annual meetings, we can bring back to our region and see how can we tackle more regional based problems, or more regional based challenges, both in the tourism as well as in the conservation perspective. So the mindset, I talked about shifting mindset, what the 4 C's are about and what the long run is about. It's really about driving positive impact. So, you know, we realize that no harm is not enough. I mean, mitigating our negative impact is just not enough anymore. We have to really look how we tackle the global challenges that are now that we're facing. We also recognize that perfection doesn't exist, so we're never there. It's a journey, and you know, it starts by the first step. And I think that's important for everyone to know, because I think you know, there's the Global Ecosphere Retreats represent the inspirational you know, global inspiration 9, but then there's 31 others, you know, on the way there that are fellow members. But there's many there's, you know, the way to achieve Global Ecosphere Retreats or any goal is to start by step 1. So and it's a journey, and as a GR, I think as Louise mentioned, it's a never-ending journey. It's about inclusivity. So we're looking at really how do we, at all levels, we're looking at collaboration. How do we involve others? This is about really bringing in others into that journey, so that we, you know, we understand that whatever we do impacts others, that whatever others do impact us as a business, as a landscape, and it's how do we collectively bring the economy, you know, on a sustainable path. This is what we're about. The efforts collaborative and caring. I think that's an important one, because we really shift mindset from exploiting to caring. So it's caring about our natural and social assets that we all depend on, but that nurture us, and that we have to invest in, like, you know, like any capital asset. And the other big shift is we're looking, you know, when we work with a destination, it's really about what's your 100-year plan. So Cottar's was already there, you know, in its family 100-year plan, but many are more on a five-year or 3-year business cycle, you know, planning cycle. So we're really push people to think, okay, what is it, you know, that you want to see in 100 years? How do you want to contribute to that happening? And it's really shifting that mindset, which is quite important when you talk about sustainability, obviously. So what is the 4 C's in, you know, in more in a framework, but also it underpins the Global Ecosphere Retreat standard. So what does it include? It's not only about not washing towels, as you can imagine. It's about many more things, and in all these aspects, it's about thinking about ourselves, you know, inward. How can we mitigate? How can we minimize our footprint? How can we minimize the threat we can represent to the biodiversity, to the local community, to the culture we're embedded in? And how can we drive positive impact outside? So we're always looking in and looking out. And in these 4 aspects, you can just see, you know, when we talk about conservation, it's about environmental management in our footprint, and biodiversity conservation. How do we contribute to the, you know, to the landscape, and obviously biodiversity our business depends on, but people depend on, globe depends on. Community, it's about being a active, supportive, involved citizen in the community we belong to. How do we collaborate? How do we create collaborative relationship and partnership with the community we live in? And inside, it's about creating a stimulating working environment that enhances capacity and lives. Culture, it's about cultural heritage, cultural expression. So it's about, again, how do we interact and how do we support this culture to be vibrant and in its time? You know, how do we support people in their cultural in their cultural dimension, and how do we as operators, for example, especially in the business, how do we give that in a respectful and collaborative way with the custodians? And commerce, I think Luis talked about it, but it's about being a viable operation that can sustain the other Cs in the long term. But it's also thinking about this 100-year. What's our succession? This is quite unusual, quite unusual in any framework to talk about succession planning. But in terms of preserving a landscape or contributing to the conservation of the landscape, we need to think much more than a generation. So just to just for you to understand, basically, members, the destiny we work, our core members are destinations. So they're places. They're privately protected areas that have a tourism component. But as Louise said, we increasingly work with other kind of members, our travel partners, our affiliate members who want to go on this journey as well. So as a destination, you come in as a fellow member and aspire to become a Global Ecosphere Retreat. The Global Ecosphere Retreat is a standard. It's externally verified. It's a journey, it's a continuous journey, but the idea of the Global Ecosphere Retreat, which is recognized by the GSTC, was really to create a way to recognize the incredible work of the members and the way, and for them to shout about it in a way that's globally recognized. It's a celebration. Travel partners are tour operators, DMCs, agents, designers who are seeking to work with, but be more sustainable and more responsible. And what we do with them, we're still designing journeys, but it's really about brainstorming, exchange, learning. Our annual meeting, which is usually face-to-face, but this time was virtual as everybody else's. It's about learning from each other, but it's also we're looking at developing a journey to help travel operators think 4 Cs. And then we have a network of supporters and affiliates which have been there since the beginning, who are experts, professionals who are keen to support our members in their journey. So it can be it can go from food to photography to conservation organization to research organization. So it's a wide network of support for our members to excel and spread the word of sustainability. So I think that was it from me, and I'll pass on to Holly. And you just tell next.
Thanks, Delphine. Okay, I'm going to keep it brief because we've had a good run through of the long run already. So Delphine, if you just go on to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so I'm a freelance travel writer, and I also work for the Long Run, helping tell their stories. So I've been specialising in sustainability for about 10 years, and as we all know, it's exploded in the last 3 years, and this year even more so. I think the pandemic has made everyone obviously pause, maybe for a little longer than we would have liked. But we have definitely had time to reflect on what a better tourism industry looks like. And so now's really the time to shout about sustainability, but it doesn't really work if we're just all shouting about the word sustainability and talking about the same things. I think it's really important that to talk about it in a way that is transparent, that we're recognizing that it's a journey, that we're recognizing there are problems, that none of us are perfect, exactly what Delphine was just saying, and that also, as anyone who's selling travel or involved in the travel supply chain, that we really fully understand what having a positive impact via our travel experiences looks like. So rather than just saying, oh, it's great because this lodge has banned plastic, or it's great because this lodge is providing jobs to the local community, kind of digging a bit deeper, okay, what's the holistic impact? And for me as a writer and as someone who specialises in sustainable tourism away from the long run, I find the 4 Cs a really helpful framework, and I come back to it time and time again. And I think it's easy for us to sometimes forget that 4th C, commerce, and how important that is, because if ultimately we're not financially sustainable in the positive impact that we're having, then we can't really talk about a better travel industry or a travel industry that has a positive impact, because the model isn't there. So here's just, I mean, there's loads of stats out there at the moment about how consumers are, travelers are increasingly passionate about having a positive impact and traveling with purpose. So here's one from Euromonitor. So 76% of consumers are expected to be more concerned about sustainability. But 42% of travel companies are postponing development of new sustainable products. And I think there's a few other stats as well. I think the Euromonitor survey back in July said that 64% of global consumers are worried about climate change, but only 50% of travel companies are doing anything about climate. So there's a real mismatch, and this is a real opportunity for anyone who does feel passionately about responsible travel. This is the time to really start leading on those messages, and I think we can look at these stats and feel more confident in maybe taking a slightly more activist stance. As I said, being a bit more honest about the challenges of responsible travel, asking more questions throughout our communications, and really bringing people on our journey, on our thought process, and trying to understand sustainability at a deeper level, which I think is what all the long run properties are passionate about, and how the long run helps them tell their stories. So Delphine, if you skip on to the next slide. Okay, so just to kind of reiterate that. So I think now talking about just being kind of sustainable and kind of looking at sustainability as a kind of standalone pillar no longer really cuts through. I think we need to talk about how our travel experiences can solve the two global crises that are increasingly kind of pressing, besides from the whole global pandemic thing. So there's two crises going on: biodiversity and climate crisis, and they're intricately linked. And so we need to look for travel experiences that are regenerative. So how are our travel experiences funding the support of species, supporting biodiversity? How is it funding conservation that helps to sink carbon in our atmosphere? How are we protecting all the mangroves, seagrass, forests, savannas that are vital to monitor, kind of keep our climate at a certain level over the next however many years? And we're also looking for experiences that are restore, so regenerate nature or restore nature. And just some questions that you can ask, kind of what, as a travel company, what is the regeneration story? So how have you maybe transformed the landscape? How have you been part of helping a community to use their wildlife or landscape as an asset? Where do you sit within that journey, and what role have you played? So impact must now be active and positive, not reactive. So it's no longer enough to be like, oh, everyone's talking about plastic, what can I talk about plastic? We need to be kind of one step ahead, I think. We need to all be a little bit more activists, a little bit more act as pioneers, kind of find the solutions and push them out there. And don't be afraid. I think, Louise and Delphine and I, we all had a long conversation about this at our annual meeting, that, you know, the travel industry is historically quite afraid to talk about anything that isn't warm and fluffy and, I don't know, sitting on a beach and being relaxed and being waited on. And I think now we can maybe, you know, we don't need to patronize all travelers in the world. I think there are plenty out there that are actually interested in these real issues and also want to go on transformative journeys themselves. So yeah, you might not buy, well, we'll hear more from Doug actually in a minute about how these kind of new positive impact experiences out there. And yeah, so how do you support or transform your guests, and how you, and making sure you're being transparent in everything you do. So I think two ways the long run is working within this is really looking at closing the loop on the supply chain. So we've got destinations that are being operating according to the 4 Cs. We've got consumers who are looking to have a positive impact, and now we need to join the dots. So we need everyone selling travel to be part of this conversation and really fully understand this conversation, so they can pass on what the destination and lodges are doing to the guests, and also so that they can help the lodges design transformational experiences that the guests will then go off into their future lives and hopefully have more good in the future and talk about how they had a transformative experience while they were traveling. So that's really kind of a big area of what the Long Run is doing at the moment. And I'm going to move on nicely to Doug, who's going to tell us about all the brilliant experiences that are going on at Cottar's.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm struggling. I'm sitting outside. So the sun is coming and going, and we have a bit of a cloud. Yes, behind me, I've got the Maasai. This is something our guests who are currently here wanted to see. And then we were joined by our resident, Eland. He likes to go to places where people are. So I'm sure you can see him on the background there. As usual, I like to start by describing the area where we are as an area having a lot of diversity in terms of habitats. We have acacia woodlands. We have a mountain ridge, which is just behind me. We have open grassland. And we also have a riverine forest. So that combination of diversity would give you the big five. That is usually what people want to see. But you know, we decided to have, you know, to come up with high value, low impact activities that would make the guests not go out all the time on game drives, but enjoy seeing the big five and doing other activities. And the Maasai Warrior School is just one of them. So this warrior school is led by one called Letilet, and Letilet is an Ndorobo, a Maasai.
We seem to have lost Doug. So in the meantime, I can maybe carry on and go through some of the sort of impact, engaging, positive educational experiences that Cottar's have to offer. And I think the Masai Mara is renowned for the big five and game drives and possibly game walks. What we're trying to do already, we have a lot of offerings that are broader than that, but we're trying to take it a step further. And we've tried to do it in a way that makes sense to portraying the important issues that are around us. So it's not go pet a baby elephant. Of course, elephants are incredibly important, but one of the keystone species in the Mara that has been decimated, over half of its population have gone in the last sort of 2 decades, is vultures, which is ugly and not very fluffy, as Holly was saying, but we think quite important and actually really, really fascinating. And so we're working with Kenya Birds of Prey Trust to develop a vulture rehabilitation center in our area. We also have a researcher who researches pangolins, and pangolins are the most traded, illegally traded species in the world. And they are a species that is relevant to the current COVID impact because they're thought to be a carrier, and between bats and pangolins and humans, and so they're researching them and understanding them is essential. We do have a pangolin researcher in our area, and we're developing a pangolin research talk. They're notoriously difficult to see because they are so heavily traded, but we're developing that talk because we feel that these are A, important, but B, fascinating, and possibly and hopefully as engaging as a game drive. There's other experiences in there that we offer. Let, who Doug was just referring to, is one of the old hunter-gatherer tribe, a sort of a distant cousin to the Maasai, and they are one of the last medicinal keepers of information on indigenous medicinal plants. And so he gives fireside talks and medicinal walks, as well as walks to forage food for dinner. And so we're trying to expand the offering so it really is engaging and impactful, providing all of our guests, for instance, with seed balls, so that you help us when you go on your game drive in replanting trees. And so I hope this showcases, just from Cottar's perspective, some of the impact and engaging activities that we're doing. I won't go on because I know we're running out of time, and Honor wanted to leave some time for questions, and I apologize for Doug cutting out. I just hope it wasn't an arrow through his computer screen or anything significant like that. So I'll hand over to Honor, and thank you so much for your time listening to us today.
Thank you so much, Louise and Delphine and Holly. I just had a message from Doug that unfortunately the power went, so but we don't know what's happening with the arrows, to be honest, but his power went. He is trying to reconnect. He was very excited about chatting today and was going to just expand a little bit on the 4C Centre, which he looks after at Cottars. But I think today has given you a good idea, overview of why this is so important to us at Cottars, but also why the long run and the two together. So thank you very much. What we will do is we will try and do a little sort of interview with Doug before we send out the follow-up, so at least we can get maybe a bit of what he talked about. In the meantime, I would love to see some questions. Louise, would you mind unsharing? There we go, perfect. What I would love to do is have some question and answers come in. I'd like to start with one that came through, which was, it's interesting to see the variety of members that you have, including tour operators and DMCs, as well as obviously camps and lodges. If a lodge was starting as a fellow member, what kind of things would you be looking from them in order to start this journey with you? Where do they start, really? Delphine, that might be a good one for you.
Yeah. Well, they contact us, but what we're looking for is in a member at the, in a destination member at this stage, is control, influence, or management of biodiversity. Then commitment and passion for driving change. So, that are key, and the third pillar is the willingness to share and learn. So have people, people contact us and have a discussion. We have an application. There's a lot of discussion with our team and the discussion, there's a lot of great work out there. So, the discussion is really, are we a good fit? Because we're a commitment. We commit as a team, as a membership, to supporting our members, but they have to commit to the journey. And are we a good fit at that stage? And are they ready for that journey? And then that's how it goes. There is a membership fee. The membership fee is a percentage of return, so it's 0.05% of returns, I think. But basically, it's between £350 to £2,000 annual fee, and there's a one-off joining fee. So I'm talking about the accommodation. The travel partners is a different thing. But again, for travel partners, we're looking for commitment different kind of commitment, because they're not working with privately protected areas, but there's an application process and interaction with the team, and a fee as well.
Okay, thank you, Delphine. That's really interesting. Because, you know, it is good to hear, because ultimately we also need the tour operators really to spread the word, as Holly said, not just through media, etc., but we need as many people as possible to be spreading this. So what advice would you actually give to the tour operators on how to push these important aspects to their clients? You know, how do we get them to engage a little bit more, if you like, with this and where they're traveling to?
So I think there's two aspects. That's for me too.
Well, between you and me, I think those are brilliant. So yes, please.
I'll do a little, and then Holly can pick up. But basically, the idea is first look at yourselves. You know, look at your operations, because a lot of tour operators are pushing the responsibility to suppliers, and it's part, you know, it's part obviously of the due diligence, but there's also looking at yourself. How you know, how am I operating? Am I operating responsibly myself, my, you know, the offices, etc. So it's also looking at, you know, what we're doing is reflective on a strategic level. So what are the causes that we're interested in? What are the challenges that we want to contribute to particularly? Because that will help also identify the kind of suppliers they want to work to, and then that will help the story they tell the clients. So for me, it's there's a kind of take, you know, first a bit of perspective to have on ourselves as a tour operator, to think about what is it that I want to achieve, a bit like, you know, the same journey that we start with the accommodation. What is it? What is the impact that I want to have in conservation? What is the impact that I want to have in community? What impact on culture I want to have, and how do I want my business to be run? And then when you have had that slight strategic reflection, then it helps you, you know, narrow down and focus what are your priorities, and then select your suppliers, and then communicate to your members, your guests. But Holly.
Yeah, I think you've said it all. I think you know, everything that we you know, all these, we can talk about the 4 C's, and obviously there's this kind of strategic piece, but underneath all of those 4 C's are hundreds and hundreds of stories, and every single member of the Long Run, and I'm sure hundreds of other lodges out there as well, you know, have so many initiatives going on. And actually this year has been incredible that so many new ones have started, or old ones have continued and grown stronger, even though nobody's been traveling. And I think for some of our travel partners, whether they're tour operators, designers, or agents, they find it really inspiring and helpful to hear those stories firsthand from the lodges, and really be able to do like a bit more of a deep dive into the details. Because for them, you know, often it's not the priority when you're selling an experience to guests, but actually now increasingly guests want to hear that level of detail, and maybe guests are kind of scrutinizing a little bit more, asking more challenging questions. So so I think really kind of understanding all of those stories is a really key part of being part of that positive impact supply chain.
Absolutely. And I think tour operators in turn will encourage guests to ask those different questions in what they're looking for. So it's a real two-way street. Doug is back with us, which is really good. Doug, we just asked the question of how we can actually, you know, spread this message further through tour operators to clients, but of course you're in camp. So therefore you are there looking after the 4C Centre. So maybe whilst you're back, we're on the question and answer session now, maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about how you use the, you know, the centre, etc., to share the message with your clients, not just through activities, but also educationally as well. Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Hooray!
I'm sorry. I sometimes modern technology doesn't work in the bush very well. But yes, so the 4C Center is one place that the guests really like to spend time, because there's a lot of information there, And it's a whole day. It's not even a whole day. It's more than a whole day information, which is very, very interesting. And I spend the whole day there with guests. They always come back again and ask questions and interact with us. So I think that it is another way of expressing or of the guests just finding more and learning more about what we do. And one interesting thing I find is that the guests can even choose an afternoon to not go anywhere, but just come to the 4C, sit there, relax. It also gives you that relaxing atmosphere and just interact with us and learn a lot more.
Thank you, Doug. And so what part of it, let's say, Doug, are you particularly passionate about? What is it that really makes, has made you, I mean, because you look after all of this, you're about implementing it all at camp, etc. So just out of interest, what is it that makes you so particularly, why is it so important for you personally as well?
We have a school, I'm sure Luis talked about that. The school, I have about 45 kids who are very active members of the environmental club. We bring them to the 4C every now and then, before schools, before the pandemic, they would come quite often. They were very keen and very interested to learn now that they are future and they are also part of the community that the conservancy or that are owners of the or members of the conservancy. I enjoy a lot teaching them about the ecosystem services. They know that the conservancy is for them and is for their future. And so for me, I think sharing that information to young kids who are the future for tomorrow is very important.
Yes, absolutely, Doug. I mean, they are the future, and the more they already start out believing in all these, it's amazing. So well done. I can't wait to come back and see more. Doug, I'm sorry that we lost you. Is there anything else that you would like to add from your side? I've got a couple more questions, but is there anything else that you'd like to add from your side that you were going to talk about just quickly?
And Doug, just to say that I did speak about some of the activities, so I tried to cover you in your absence.
Thank you so much, Liz. Yes, so I think it's important to know about Letilet. He is, I was just explaining, he's a hunter-gatherer who, he's probably the last one we're going to see. And he's written a book called Letilet's Tales, and he's got about 9 million followers on YouTube. And so we want to document the medicinal plants of within the conservancy, because of course now with the contemporary medicine, the younger generation are choosing to go a different way. And so if we don't do that, we're going to lose a lot of knowledge. His book has a lot of plans for medicine, but not for us, for Olari, not for the conservancy here. So he's a legend, and when you go out foraging with him, you will actually just enjoy, because you can live off without any other food, but just out there with the berries and the vegetables. So that is something that we want to cover.
I think that sounds brilliant. I could definitely learn to live healthier like that. Thank you so much, Doug. Just I mean, I know that the history of Cottars has always been very linked in with community and conservation. It's always been part of their ethos. But since becoming a member, well, not just a member, but a GER status member of the Long Run, have you seen a growth of wildlife? Has the relationship strengthened between the local community? Do you share that message with the local community? Can you see the impact of everything that you've done growing further, and how?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. You know, the Conservancy provides a very important ecosystem services to the local community. It provisions for food. It provisions for food in many ways, because their pastures and their livestock is crucial to them. So when we have a conservancy that is providing for them, it becomes their role to look after it, and also to look after the wildlife in it, because the wildlife is what brings the tourists here, and the tourists then will go to visit the villages. They will directly benefit them. So together, I think I have been here the last 15 years, and I can say without any fear of contradiction that wildlife has thrived and increased tremendously. We're talking of the big five, which is what, you know, like we're saying earlier on, is what the least that people want to see. That we can almost guarantee that is here. We see that all the time. But it's also important for us to do the walks, to see the other small little things, and to give our guests the cultural experiences. So you know, all that together brings the community and strengthens it makes them see the value of having wildlife and keeping the conservancy going.
Thank you, Doug. I think, yes, because Louise also talked about the vultures and the pangolin research projects. So yes, it's fantastic to hear that. I have, just out of interest, you talked about the people that can join the Long Run, Delphine. What about smaller airlines within, say, Zambia? I know it's a bit of a bizarre one, but ultimately everyone's got to, you know, we can't go anywhere without them within the country. So is there a way that maybe some of them could become members? Just someone asked that, so it would be good to have an
interestingly, we're working on a little journey looking at the forces in aviation. That's a project. But to be honest, we're looking for lead thinkers in sustainability. So what we're looking at, you know, for example, as an affiliate, we don't have a category for aviation yet, or, you know, as members, but as affiliates, if we have an innovative aviation company, someone who's really interested in how they can get more sustainable, but they're already showing leadership, we're open, definitely in the affiliate membership.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's good. Well, I think I've just been sort of seeing if I've just covered everything that's come through. It's come through on WhatsApp as well, so I don't want to miss anything. Has any of our participants got any more questions for us today? I think, to be honest, that you've all been very succinct in giving us a good overview. Louise, I think, you know, we talk about how we can share the message with our clients. Obviously, that's done within the stay. I think one last one would be, how do you also share that message with potential future clients coming in, other than obviously through me and the tour operators, but how do you do that? Maybe as a last question.
So I think when travel agents and tour operators are speaking with destinations, and likewise destinations speaking with travel agents, You know, the dialogue needs to move beyond how many beds do you have. And some are doing it and are showing interest, and some just aren't. And I think a guest's experience, particularly those that have money, or where money is tight and they really want to make their holiday count, they're looking for that purposeful experience. They're looking for adding a contribution and leaving an impact. And I think that dialogue needs to be more substantive as we move forward, because it does matter, and it matters to your clients. So it should matter more in the dialogue that we have, and in our marketing materials, and in the services that we provide. So I hope that there'll be, you know, room for that dialogue to expand.
Brilliant, thank you, Louise, because ultimately, you know, it's not just about what we do when we travel, it's also about what we do at home as well. And if I can go away and learn things to bring them home into my life and vice versa, we all have a lot to share, really. But I think this has been super interesting. I've had a couple of messages saying this has been really interesting. So a huge thank you. Hopefully we can do a follow-up maybe again in about 6 months' time or a year's time, and look at this, maybe even sooner. But we'll look at this subject again. So I think what's left to say, has anyone else got anything that they'd like to finish off with today?
Yeah, thank you.
No, just thanks, Anna, for organising.
Well, thank you.
And thanks for everyone joining.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for everyone joining, including my dog in the background who's looking out of the window. Sorry. Linda, come here. So she's doing a goodbye to everybody. But thank you so much for being here today. We will send out a follow-up with a bit more information on the long run. And of course, Cottar will continue to be sending out. And obviously, Doug and his colleagues behind there, goodbye, and thank you for being there today. And I hope to all see you all very soon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.